Now, millions of Chinese people have been banned from traveling on planes and trains as the government expands its social credit program that ranks people's trustworthiness. In 2018, more than 17 million people with low scores were barred from buying flight tickets and another 5 million from using high-speed trains. Nearly 4 million companies have been blacklisted from a number of activities, including bidding on projects, taking part in land auctions. Rights activists have raised concerns over China's bid to assign a personal score to each of its citizens. And unlike most of the other Chinese government websites that offer content in English, the so-called trustworthiness blacklist was only available in Chinese. Well, Dan Wang is a China analyst for the Economist Intelligence Unit. She joins us via Skype now from Beijing. Thanks very much for being with us. So just explain to us, for those who aren't familiar with this social credit scheme, how it works and how the government there uses it, some would say, to monitor people and the way they behave towards the state.
Well, the social credit system, it works actually by principle very much similar to those in Europe and America. It's just the Chinese government is collecting data from a much broader type of indicators, like whether people pay their loans on time, what they say on the internet, whether they visit their parents on time, all sorts of those petty behaviors that we don't think normally would be included in the developed world. But overall, I want to believe that the government is trying to do this out of good intention, especially during this economic downturn. There can be a lot of social unrest, and economic stability is obviously the top priority for the top leadership. So by doing this, it's probably one of the easiest way for Chinese government to improve efficiency of governing. But just by the sheer number and the lack of transparency of the program, I can see this system can very much backfire.
When you talk about those examples that you mentioned, when people are being monitored for how long they're on the internet and how often they go to visit their parents and so on, I mean, for people outside China, it all sounds a little Orwellian, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It just seems that the arm of the Chinese government is really reaching too long. And for myself, I really feel uncomfortable to see all those millions of people are affected already by being denied of their access to flights and high-speed rails, because a lot of those people are actually part of the most disadvantaged group in China. They're very much in need of bigger help. If they did do something wrong, the key thing to help them is actually through education, to teach them the consequence of their behavior and try to help them instead of just taking scores. And I can see the system probably maybe by out of good intention, but hurt very much the group of people that it should help to start with.
So you're saying there that this can be unfairly rigged towards people on lower incomes?
Absolutely. It is actually not a question of if this will hurt this most disadvantaged group of people, but when and how bad this would be. Because there are already news here and there talking about some people really need access to rails and high-speed rails to actually support their livelihood. But because they didn't pay back their loans on time, they couldn't do this. Or actually they have extra babies that are not allowed, so their scores are affected. And I think this is really fundamentally, it's a social justice problem. It's also about how they draw the line. Because I know that many of the top leadership and their families are not included in the system, and then eventually who is being monitored and which group are actually being helped is very unclear.
And if there's enough pushback against this, is it likely that the Chinese government will respond, will try to adapt it in any way?
Well, I certainly hope this social credit rating system will be one of those crossing the river by feeling the stone type of pilot program, because now it's still, although it affects millions of people, it's still a small fraction of Chinese population. But I do not think this is the time that we'll see a massive protest against this, especially during this economic downturn. I believe most people still would want some more help from the government, because China, truth to be told, that Chinese society is not the most trusting society. Strangers rarely help each other. If you stay in China long enough, you will bump into some sort of scam, like pyramid scheme, like internet fraud, and there's a few ways that can effectively actually regulate this sort of behavior. So by creating the social credit system, the government actually provides some more deterrence to some of the bad behavior. But I just don't see that the system can last long, especially when I see those numbers. I feel very uncomfortable. And I believe many people living in Chinese cities will feel very uncomfortable as well.
Good to speak with you, Dan Wang in Beijing.